Hey YouTube, it is league turnover and we have all three on, Great League, Ultra League, and Match League. So this video, we're gonna look at top teams. So this Great League was on 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. So I just did a top Great League teams with analysis there. So I'm gonna link that in the description if you wanna check that out for other team ideas. What I'm gonna do is focus on the updated rankings here and how you're gonna have to team build because of it. So I've just got my other video. It says 2 weeks ago, so it's probably 2-3 weeks old at this point. And I'm looking at the thing, and during that video I said, do not worry about Carbink because you'll not see a ton of it. Everyone only has one if they paid for the ticket. It's not good IVs. You don't need to worry about it. Now we just had Global Goal Fest. Now you need to worry about it because I think I've seen a ton of people on Twitter in person talking about how many Carbinks they have and being able to get good IVs and excel at like 247 XLs. So this thing is now going to be a menace in Great League. So let's just take a look at it quickly here. It's an easy Pokemon to deal with. So what I mean by that is, so it's a rock and fairy. Because it's rock and fairy, it is double weak to steel, weak to grass, ground, and water, but it double resist dragon, and then single resist normal, flying, fire, dark, and bug, right? So lots of resistances there, and it's super, super bulky. And it has a fast move of Rock Throw, which is heavy damage, and gets to Rock Slide and Moonblast. So great coverage of a Pokemon there. What I mean by it's easy to deal with, they're just such like very, very simple meta answers for this. The main one being your steals, right? Galarian Stunfisk, steals and ground to a certain extent, right? So steals are the easiest one because steals resist rock and fairy, right? So they're just absolutely trapped against the Galarian Stunfisk and Registeel, which is why these are such big wins. Rock is also resisted by ground, right? So it's essentially like a better version of Bastiodon, but you still have super good matchups with Swampert and Diggersby against Bastiodon, right? So there's that. And even Sandslash with the Shadow Claws and Joe Run are gonna still beat this thing, despite taking neutral because you're half ice there, right? So there's ways to get around this, even going up to like the 400 matchups here. Like Crest with Grass Knot is just bulky enough and super effective with Grass Knots. Toxapex, because it's a fairy, but it's only neutral to, it's only neutral to poison because it's half rock, but it's weak to water, so you can brine it and you're tanky enough. Water Gun Lantern here. The other water, I was like, where's Spark Lantern? And it's here and it's a loss, but then I did the analysis and it requires a Rock Slide bait and then landing a Moonblast. If you only have Rock Slide or if they shield a Moonblast, Lantern actually wins that matchup, right? So there's answers. There's a ton of meta answers in, Metachamp, I guess, would have to take a Moonblast, but I'm wondering if they didn't have Rock Slide and if they just went straight Moonblast. Okay, there you go. Straight Moonblast, you do not get to the second Moonblast, and Metachamp quite easily wins, right? So between Metachamp and Lantern and Galarian Stunfisk and Swampert and Registeel, did I say Sandslash, right? There's enough meta Pokemon that I think you can deal with Carbink. Even some of these like other losses here, like Scrafty, I guess you take a double super effective Moonblast, so that makes sense. Coffagrigus, Lickitung, you'd have to go with just Power Whip. Okay, so straight Power Whip and still left with 38 health, which is a decent amount of health, right? But so those, I'm not super worried about it. If you are super worried about it, if you think like, oh man, this thing's gonna be super tanky, it's gonna be everywhere, and you're gonna want to pair these things, like there's a lot of these things that pair well together, like Swampert and Registeel, right, pair well because Swampert's main weaknesses are gonna be like dragons or grass, which Registeel resists, right? So they're an easy pairing. Galarian Stunfisk is generally a good safe swap. Like you can run double steel with Stunfisk and Registeel and have something on the lead that just beats fighters and like Swampert, stuff like that, right? Like Trevenant or something like that. Like there's answers to Carbink. The other thing that is on this list that was not on this list before is Shadow Poliwrath has jumped up to number 8, and it was not on the top 20 list before. As I confirm with my one I just did. Yeah. So it was not on this list before. Number 8 before was Pelipper, which has moved up, which is interesting. I think Pelipper moved up because you have Swampert, which is 4 and 5 now, and it was 4 and 6. Again, the Swampert's just so big, so good. And just Poliwrath, like being able to do super effective with the wing attacks. But Poliwrath is one that I'm less scared of. The problem with Poliwrath is, let's just actually go to the wins here, because there is some actually crazy wins here. This is running Power Punch, right? So you have a counter Power Punch user that you can just ramp up on. So anything that's weak to fighting, Registeel, walrein, sandslash. There's a lot of stuff weak to fighting: Lickitung, Obstagoon, Digger's Beak, Learn Stunfisk, yada, right? So a lot of the things I just mentioned here, and I'm guessing you beat Swampert ramping up 2 here. Yeah, 699, 641. So suddenly we're looking at a very good pairing of, I guess Venusaur would be your only double weakness if you want to run, I guess, Cresselia too. And Medicham. Actually, there's a couple things. I was going to say you can like link them together, but then like, maybe you can't link them together because there are some double weaknesses. And, oh wait, that's Vic. That's not Venusaur. Venusaur is actually a win. I was about to say, you probably need to land a Hurricane on that, but it's, the wing attacks are going to add up on Venusaur. But yeah, like Crest because it's just so tanky. Again, the tanky Pokemon because Pelipper is pretty weak, and then Lantern you can't do much about. So you could pair those two together. Otherwise, you're just pairing stuff that resists counter, essentially, if you're running with a Poliwrath, right? So team building for Carbink. Let's actually just do team building for both. You can actually give recommendations. PvPoke gives recommendations, but basically, as a fairy rock, as you're double weak to steel and you're weak to grass, ground, and water. If you're going to pair something, you're pairing something that beats with Galarian Stunfisk, Registeel, and to a certain extent, Machamp. They recommend Medicham. Sorry, not Medicham. Swampert, Registeel, and Galarian Stunfisk. So you're pairing it with Medicham, Pelipper, Vigoroth, Lickitung, Scrafty. Obviously, Medicham is the best one of all of these. Lickitung is, I don't love Lickitung. I mean, you'll actually hang in with everything here, so it's not a terrible option. But just like any counter user, like Medicham, stuff like that is way better. So I would go with something with Carbink, Medicham, Carbink, Vigoroth if you want to go Vigoroth. Just Carbink, Fighter, Safe Swap, or like Pelipper connects to Safe Swap, Medicham, something like that, right? So that is how you build with Carbink. How you build with Poliwrath is, it should not have gotten off the list here, but if you're going to be weak, you're essentially weak to anything that resists fighting or is water, because water is going to resist, or water with a subtyping is going to resist all your moves, aka Jellicent, Azumarill. Lantern you can hit if you run counter Power Punch, but these other two, Azumarill, Jellicent, are just going to resist everything, right? So you're going to have to pair it with something that can beat all these. On first glance, it's, I was going to say, it looks like Trevenant, but not with Charizard there. So what can beat Jellicent, Azumarill, and Charizard, and can deal with the Charmer? That is interesting. What are the recommendations for this? If it's a Charm Ninetales, they may recommend the Owl, but the Owl with Bubble and Ice Beam is going to be a little tough. But yeah, Noctowl is probably one that they're going to recommend. Let's go see what they recommend. Lickitung, Crest, Pelipper, Lantern, Stunfisk, suggested teammates. Right, so if you're gonna be weak to the grass Pokemon, Cresselia, yeah, Cresselia makes sense, except it's gonna be tough against like a Charizard because then you won't have anything to throw. But Pelipper, same idea, right? You're resisting all the fighters, plus you have Hurricane, Nuke in general, Lantern, same sort of thing. Lantern doesn't resist the fighters, but it does well against all those water Pokemon that you're not going to have moves for. Azumarill, Jellicent, stuff like that. So you just have such a good matchup there. Lickitung is going to resist Jellicent, and it's just so tanky in neutral situations, it'll do fine. So either of these are fine safe swaps. Galarian Stunfisk kind of tricky because then you're also like kind of double weak to Medicham, stuff like that. So I don't love that one, but any of these are quite honestly like fine. Flyer, like I would assume the Owl's fine too. I mean, that would make you, no, that would make you double weak to Electric. How much Electric is, I mean, Togedemaru is, but how much Electric is really in Great League? In terms of other Pokemon, I was looking at my list here, and the only thing of note that I noted was Lantern was number 15 before, and Noctowl was number 16 before, and they have both dropped out of the top 20. Lantern is down to 21, and Noctowl is down to 23. So that is quite the shift over the last couple seasons since they were both in the top 4. I noticed that, and I think it's just a bigger effect based on just Carbink being over-represented at the top. I still think those two are strong, especially against like Poliwrath, right? Because if you have Poliwrath, if people are running Poliwrath, Lantern and Noctowl Core is fine, right, to deal with that. So I'm not super worried about that core not being in the top 20 because I think it'll still be strong. Looking at the list, the rest is basically the same. Lickitung down 1, Sableye up 2, Double same spot. Shadow Quagsire is down 3, but it's still there. Whiscash, like all your Mud Boys are going to be there because Whiscash, Quagsire are going to be just nice answers to Carbink, Registeel, Stunfisk. Does okay against Swampert, does okay against Medicham, right? So Mud Boys, I think, are very, very strong. It's interesting because there's no real grass in the top 30 here. Lurantis is the first at 38. Meganium's on one of my teams, the top teams there, at 39. But it's interesting because if you're going to have something that is weak to grass here, I mean, Registeel resist it, but you're neutral here, Mudboy, water. If you're a grass poison like Venusaur, you resist the fighting. Scraft, you resist the fighting. Sableye and stuff, you do neutral matchups. Quagsire, super effective. Walrein, you're going to get outpaced there, but super effective. Machamp is a counter user. Bastiodon, right? I think that grass is maybe going to be underrated here because there's a lot of stuff like fighting and a lot of Mud Boys and a lot of stuff are weak to grass, and your main weaknesses in Noctowl is less around. You still have steals like Registeel and a Sandslash, which a lot of people run, but if you could build around that with like a fighter, maybe not a fighter because then you're double weak to flying, but something to deal with those. I think grass can be it's like a sneaky pick here, but then a lot of people just use like Crest with Grass Knot or like another Pokemon with a grass type move. But yeah, then the rest of the stuff, I expect you to see a Sandslashes, like Defense Deoxys, maybe a little less Flyers if people are afraid of Carbink, maybe a little less of the Owl, a little less Voltaria, and then a few more Mud Boys. That would be my guess heading into this week. I'd expect an increase in Carbink, an increase in Poliwrath, offset by an increase in Mud Boys and Fighters, and then people trying to start countering those things is my guess of how the Great League is going to roll out this week. But again, you can check the video in the link in the description for other ideas for teams. And that is it. Ultra League. So again, Ultra League and Master League is on. We just went over Ultra League like 3 weeks in a row now, so I'm not going to do top teams there. I'm going to actually have teams for Ultra League. Master League, I might want to look at Xerneas. So I might actually look at Xerneas because that is actually going to significantly change the Master League meta. So we'll talk about that in the video this afternoon. So that's it. Thanks for watching. See you guys in the next one.